What's happening? How's it going?
Josh, it would seem like a little low on offensive linemen these days, starters. Just talk about, first of all, what Cody was able to do playing a full game with that injury that now has knocked him out of the season, and just how you go about the process of, it's always next man up, right? But this is a lot.
Right. Yeah, you hit it. Just feel bad for Cody. He played a hell of a game. I mean, he battled. You saw the way he was finishing plays. The touchdown to Mech early on there, he was getting a hat on a hat in the end zone, and he just embodies what we do here in terms of helping the runner off the pile and bringing the fight to those guys, and did an unbelievable job. But you hit it on it again, is just the adjustments, and we'll just go from there in terms of where we're at with the O-line, but still working through some things on that end of it.
Can you speak to the job so far that Kevin Carberry and Brian Bacucci have had to undertake and do to produce a 2-0 start for you guys?
They've done an unbelievable job. We've gone against two really good fronts the first 2 weeks, and whether it's from the scheme or the adjustments that we need to make with the line or the scheme in game to put our guys in a good position possible to make plays and get a hat on a hat and be the most physical unit, which I think we've done, is great to see. And those guys are just not stuck in their ways on how we've done things and being open-minded on different options for us, just to give us our guys the best chance to go out there and win, and hats off to those guys.
On Sundays, fans are seeing their work with the starters, and then, of course, a few guys that have had to step in. But what about their work that they've done with the guys that they've had to develop, the practice squad players? Can you just speak to that?
Yeah, it's actually going on right now, what they do after practice or during the last periods of practice, where we can get those guys developmental reps on the scheme for not only this week, but just the core fundamentals and techniques that we try to use day in and day out that really started back in the spring. And so we always look at it like the mentality of those guys never know when they're going to have to play. So if they get the work in and the extra meeting time and get the practice reps on the field and get the extra indie time, they're just in a better position if and when they need to get out there.
What about the success of you guys' quick game, and also like Baker being able to sell like what looks like it's going to be a little quick pass, and then he's heaving it 25 yards to Emeka in the end zone, like just his ability as a quarterback to be able to do that, and maybe how it helps you in a situation where you are going to be shorthanded as an O-line?
It's something we look at week to week in terms of the scheme on how many quick throws or how many deep throws or whatever the run game concepts might be there. But the onus is really on the guys on the perimeter, that when we do that, to be able to get a hat on a hat, that way they're getting someone covered up, that way we can have potential explosive plays on the perimeter to be able to potentially exploit things that we see on the defensive side of it, and then trying to make things look the same. That way they don't have a really beat on if we're in this formation or this run, is it always a run or is it always a pass? And in our mind, at least, that puts pressure on the defense to not be able to just trigger on, hey, they're just throwing this or they're just running it here, to now put the pressure on them to make them communicate and try to rally to the ball.
Josh, how much have you had to pump the brakes on the advancement of your offense with all these injuries on the front line?
Not much. It's really a week-to-week thing in terms of what do we want to get to that week. I'd say when you start camp, it's really, okay, here's the base stuff, day one install, day two, day three. But each week is so unique in terms of what kind of runs, what kind of play actions, what kind of protections or passes we have, where we just use what we think is going to win the game that week, and then it might carry over to the next week, or we might not even really use it again.
Charlie Heck had spent most of his time at left tackle thinking he might be the starter, and you guys made some different moves there. Had to go in and play right tackle. I know that's the job, right? Swing tackle. But how did he play, and what did you make of just his readiness for that?
It's a testament to him on the same question you asked Jenna on these guys being able to take the reps out here of working to the left, working to the right, with the thought that I could go in really at any of these positions. And it's just, again, hats off to him for being able to enter the game and have the kind of production and help us out. It wasn't like he went in the game in the fourth quarter. I don't know what portion that was in the first quarter, but him being on top of it during the week on the scheme and the communication, especially in a hostile environment, in a very loud crowd, and two really premier DNs that we faced there. And it's, again, hats off to him, but as well as the entire O-line, the tight ends, the backs on the communication to try to get Bake as much time out there to get the ball down the field.
Did you show it? Obviously, it was a good call, but you're on the goal line. The clock is a factor. Let it run down a little bit, but to run the ball there at the 2-yard line, I know Charlie was fired up about that. Like, was it just like, hey, mentality thing? Like, this is what we're doing.
It's absolutely mentality. It was from the spring, win the game in the trenches. We'd ran the ball effectively up to that point, and then we looked at it like, hopefully these guys are gassed, and let's go pound them one more time.
You were saying that you're still going through it now, what to do with all these injuries and who's going to play where. is there any scenario where you could have one player you just signed, or maybe even sign somebody now, actually play? Or would it be most likely somebody that's been here on the O-line?
Yeah, it's still a little early with some of the things that have happened to try to hash that out at this point. We'll have to get through watching the tape today, tomorrow's install of the red area, get into Saturday before we really have a feel for exactly what that's going to look like on game day.
You talked about the shuffling of the wide receiver position last year, where at one point you were down your top 3 guys, and so many guys had to step in. How does that prepare you? Obviously different, area with the offensive line, but how does that prepare you for a situation like this as a play caller?
It does, because we've become well versed in that. But I think that we see it, of course, because we're here, but it just happens so much across the NFL already, where you need to have the plans for those guys you're planning on playing with, and then contingencies, and that's on us to just know the strengths and weaknesses of whoever might play to try to tailor it to them, like we did with the receivers last year, and that could essentially come from any position. But as coaches, you have to be able to do that and try to put the best foot forward, go out there and win that game, and then see who we're playing the next week.
So from the outside looking in, it looks like you made a lot of adjustments in that game. Like when you had Luke, and then Charlie comes in, and you did some different things, and then the running game became more effective in the second half. Did you have to make a lot of in-game adjustments? And it looked like it was a pretty smooth transition for you and the coaches to do that.
Yeah, there was definitely a communication element once Luke went out on getting the best plays, putting our guys in position to make plays. And that's just on us. I would say the communication, especially from the box, on what was going on coverage-wise, and then being able to talk to Pacucci up there and then Carbs in terms of the O-line on really what are some of the best plays we feel like we can get to and happening in real time. But, again, those are scenarios that we really need to be prepared for to be able to get those off. I know people talk about halftime adjustments and that kind of thing, but ultimately halftime is not even really that long, so sometimes you get even more time between drives, depending upon how long the defense is out there to get it done. But it was great to see that everybody just, okay, this is what we're going to do. We've got to go out there and put some points on the board and go from there.
We saw Ryan Miller for a touchdown there against the Texans, and he's able to catch touchdowns like that, like he did last year in Kansas City as well, but he's also been a pretty good blocker in the run game. How nice is it to have a versatile guy like that in the room, especially when he's got so many people ahead of him, like Mecca, and when Chris Baldwin comes back, and like Evans and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's invaluable. That's what we talked about a little bit in here on what that, we'll call it 4th or 5th receiver position plays, where when those guys can play the X, the F, and the Z, meaning outside the slot and then outside to the field, and then have his role in the kicking game, and then be a really good blocker and understand exactly what we're doing. And he might not get a rep at that all week, and then he goes in there in the game and scores on it. That's what you're hoping for. He's an ultimate team player to be able to do that, and that's what kind of value you find in those guys when they can do multiple positions, and they're very physical and they're very smart.
When you're playing elite pass rushers like you did last week off the edge, how good was it to have both Bucky and Rashad able to just crease those guys? And they got help up front, obviously, but it's the combination there and the unselfishness of those guys just to press forward and make big plays.
Yeah, they made massive plays, whether it was in the run game and being able to pound it. And then we talked a little bit last week on the amount of the carries those guys are getting. And then when you have an extended drive and you see a couple of them come in. But what they're able to do after contact, getting those extra yards was fantastic to see. And then the big play with Buck in the 2-minute, I mean, that was just a check down. And he made Al-Shair miss. And it just shows the kind of toughness and grit that those guys have on being able to grind it out. They want the ball at that point, which is great to see, too, because we're going to go down the field, give it to me, and make an explosive play.
To execute so well on the 2-minute. May not be perfect last week. I know Baker, I think, hit 4 or 5, I think 5 passes, completions. But, I mean, this time of year, a lot of times it isn't perfect. But to be able to go and execute in the 2-minute in your first 2 weeks and come from behind victories, like, just what does that say about this coaching staff, this group, the no panic in these guys, their attitudes?
Yeah, it's the resiliency. It's the same belief we had in Atlanta to be able to go do that, get 4th and 10, and Baker's able to do that. Not only does it energize our sideline, but the guys on the field, it makes them, they're thinking the game's over, and then now they got to scramble and catch up with them, and hopefully they're gassed and we can stay on the ball and keep those guys on the field so that they can't sub. But once you get that spark, we talk about a 2-minute on, once you get that first down, then you put the pressure on them to try to communicate, try to make a call, try to stop you. And then these guys, you kind of forget about being tired as that thing gets a little bit closer to the end zone, because now we know we're in a spot to be able to go score. and now you can feel it from the sideline. You can feel it from the O-line, trying to hold up, get the ball out. But it's the conditioning part of it too, playing out here in practice every day as hot as it is, going back to training camp as well as the spring, that hopefully you can step up in those circumstances to go win the game late.
Coach, with Chris and Jalen out to start the season, what have you seen from Sterling Shepard? How valuable has he been, both in productivity standpoint and also just his veteran presence?
It's both. It's the juice he brings, just talking trash out there 5 minutes ago, and how hard he plays. It can be quiet out there and you can hear him saying something. You don't know what it's going to be, but his ability to make plays for us, he's had some that it might not even be designed to go to him. Baker scrambles, finds him. He's been doing that for over a decade now, I guess, with their connection. But the juice that he brings, whether it's in him blocking somebody or running through somebody on the 2-minute drive versus Atlanta, because those are the kind of guys when people love them and respect them and how hard they play, it's the same thing like what happened with Buck on the 2-minute, where it just makes everybody on the sidelines juiced up, and that sparks everybody.
Speaking of the wide receiver, like Emeka hadn't practiced today, are you anticipating having him? And even if he's banged up, who would be next up? Would it be Miller?
I'd say it's still a little bit early on that in terms of where we're at with it. We still got tomorrow's practice, see how it's looking, and then really go from there as we get a little bit later in the week.
Regardless of who's playing on the offensive line, how tough will it be trying to slow down Quinnen Williams at defensive tackle?
I feel like it's every week in the NFL, but you're going against really good D-lines. It started in Atlanta. Clearly that unit last week was fantastic, and then starting with Quinnen, but they've got guys at every level, especially with the edge rushers. We'll see if Johnson plays, but McDonald's a really good player. They run to the football. You can tell that they preach that in practice, and you can see it show up on tape. And then really with Sauce as well as a really good cover guy. But it's every week in the NFL with these D linemen and D ends.
Josh, in that game, Baker fumbles the ball, just drops it, right? And there it is. And for Rashad to be alert enough to recover it, took a hell of a shot.
He did.
What do you make of just that kind of effort that you get?
Absolutely selfless, just putting the team first. I mean, that was such a massive play. Be able to get on that and give us a chance. And you could see the way he had that look in his eye the whole game where we weren't going to be stopped. And he put the team on his back on a lot of it, a lot of dirty runs. And that kind of epitomizes his day right there, even though he had really good runs and a couple catches. But it's fantastic to see.
Well, then you look at his work as a pass blocker, too, on blitz pickup, and
Yep.
you see the way he sacrifices his body in that department. Does he get enough credit for all the extra things that he does? I know Bucky gets talked about a lot, and he's had to kind of take on a different role. But he also has become kind of a jack of all trades on offense, right? Like what you can do with him in the passing game and
Right.
as a route runner even.
I don't know what kind of love he gets really outside the building. I know in the building when we have our meetings and we show those kind of plays, he had a massive pickup on, I think it was the play to Mike in the low red area in the 2-minute drive, being able to come across and block, I think it was Petrie on that one. But he's a really good pass blocker, and there's a time he puts in during our pass protection meeting and then be able to take that to the field and take on whether it's linebackers or fitting up on a D lineman who might have him by 80 pounds. He's still selfless on that, and then especially once he gets some kind of DB pressure to be able to pick that up. But really good in the run game and clearly in the protection, and then also be able to give him the ball a couple times. So he played one hell of a game.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.